Thank you for joining me for another Quick Hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robyn, aka Mental MacGyver. I provide concierge high performance support and coaching to executives, founders, celebrities, and athletes. With me today, I have Abby McCloskey. She's a certified financial planner, helping people live a fulfilled life. I have Dr. Rhonda Bompensa-Zimmerman. She is a substance use response coordinator in public health, and she runs marathons. And I have Catarina von Maydell. She helps business leaders build disruptive business models and define key leverage points to create powerful change and impact using process of systemic, organizational, and human evolution. If you want different, lead different. The question I have today, what does it mean to hold a grudge? Abby, kick us off.
I think really simply just to not let go of that anger about a particular situation. And honestly, for me personally, sort of revel in it a little bit, like kind of enjoy being mad about, I'm mad about that thing. And I'm going to stay there for a while.
Okay.
I have a hard time staying mad, honestly. It drains my energy, I find, if I'm holding a grudge. I become obsessed with it. Like I ruminate on something. If somebody's done wrong by me, I can't seem to let it go. And it impacts my energy and really my ability to be present. So I really try to consciously let it go. But that's only something that I've been really conscious of, I would think, as I've gotten older. But I've naturally just kind of been a forgiving person. I can't speak to why that is, but it's not that I don't get angry. My body just doesn't like how that feels. So I tend to let things go, but I always remember though.
And that I want to talk about that in a minute. Catarina, go ahead.
I really agree with what Abby and Dr. Rhonda had said. Abby, you mentioned hanging on to it. And I think a lot of people, or you talked about reveling in it. And I think there is sort of a healthy part in doing that. And then Dr. Rhonda, what you were talking about is not letting it weigh you down. I think what's important is to look at the signals that we're getting from times that we want to hold grudges, because a lot of times it basically means we have unresolved issues. And there's a whole bunch of ways that we can take a look at that. But I think grudges are normal. Some people hold on to them more than others, but I think they often will signal, not always, but often will signal that there's something in our past that we haven't resolved. And for some reason, we're being triggered by whatever is causing that grudge.
So for me, there's something about a grudge has some bitterness, some anger associated to it, where memory may not be a grudge. So I have a silly example. When I was in grade school, there were two little girls who would not play tag with me. To this day, I remember their names are Claire and Rayanne. Is that a grudge that I remember? Like, I won't even tell you how long ago grade school was. I'm not sure if that's a grudge or not.
Well, it sounds like an unresolved issue. I mean, that's when you look at what our needs for survival are, ostracism is one of the biggest threats to our survival, especially when you're young and you can't rationalize it, right? So regardless of whether it was a big deal or not a big deal, the fact that you're holding on to that, whether it's a grudge or not, is a pretty good indication that somehow your existence felt threatened. And that probably is influencing other things, other choices that you make later on in life too.
I think everyone said something about age a little bit. And I find the things that I would have gotten mad about in high school are on my radar now. And that stayed in your mind, Robyn, because it was kind of a core memory, like maybe the first feeling of just feeling a little bit rejected. But I find the older I get, the saying, I just don't feel like I have the time to hold on to them. So if I do, it's got to be a very personal thing. And I guess the older I get, when people who are my age are holding grudges, I have zero time for them. I'm thinking, how do you have this kind of time? Whereas I think younger, your world is just smaller. So you have more time to do in those things. And I tend to remember the things that happened as a little kid too. And I guess I treat them more as a memory now. If I saw that person, I'd still say, hey.
I want to go back to something that Dr. Rhonda said about letting go of things and forgiving and just moving on, but remembering. Because I think that a lot of times when somebody does something to you, if you forgive them and then let them do it again, that's foolish. So what does it look like to let go of, forgive, not hold a grudge, but also have a boundary that you don't let someone repeatedly do things to you?
It's kind of like my radar goes up a little bit. So I'm watching for similar behavior. And if it happens again, like having a conversation, and then if things keep coming up, I don't, kind of like what you said, Abby, I will just remove myself from the situation. Like, I don't have time for this. So, and you kind of learn who those people are that kind of revert back to old behaviors that just zap zap your energy and it's just negative and it just drains you. I just limit that time as much as possible.
I don't think you have to forgive and forget, like you said. You can forgive and then arm's length, because is it a misunderstanding or is it who they are at their core? And if you ask yourself that and they're not going to change and they're consistent and you keep letting that happen again and get mad and stew, does it fall on you? And I think at some point it does.
I would say
Catarina?
there's three parts to the question that you asked. There's the other person who's doing something to you that causes you to have a grudge. If you keep spending time with people that are insulting you in some way, offending you in some way, then you need to remove yourself from them. If you find yourself attracting the same people over and over and over again, and people who tend to hold grudges usually tend to hold the same types of grudges. So then they have to think about what are the dynamics that are creating that situation where they keep attracting those people into their lives. And you obviously have to look at yourself and figure out what part of me needs to heal, or what do I need to do so that I don't create these patterns and attract these people anymore.
I've definitely been accused of, oh, you're holding a grudge, when I'm like, no, that's just a boundary. I'm not interested in going around that circle again. So I think that some people want you to forgive them just so that you don't have a boundary.
There's a lot of people who are very uncomfortable with boundaries, because if you think in our society, holding boundaries and enforcing your boundaries, regardless of how gracefully you do it, is often not tolerated by a lot of people because they don't know how to hold the boundaries. So I think that's actually a societal problem. And obviously individual people have to take responsibility. But I think the difference, the way that I would differentiate between a grudge and a boundary being crossed, is a grudge, you can't let go of the energy. A boundary you can move past. You can say, that's not appropriate for me. We've talked about that before. And then you can move on and let go and make sure that you distance yourself from the situation.
So that brings up a good question. How do you get over a grudge?
Time and your world becoming bigger and more complete with other things. And mine are all personal. I don't hold work grudges because that's my boundary. Like I can't let it to that little piece of me. But they've always just been time. I don't care. They just go in the wind for me.
Yeah, same for me, time. And then I also journal. So, and that's been really helpful for me. Recently, even the past year, I really dedicated the past year to journaling and just going back and kind of seeing some of the growth progress. It may be times where I would have held some grudges or was holding it in that moment, and just seeing how different aspects of life kind of just change that energy and allow you to let it go and truly forgive in a way that feels good for everybody, really. But it requires a lot of honest conversations too. It has to be a two-way street. You just can't do it yourself.
Oh, you think you have to talk to the person with whom you have a grudge?
Yeah, if it's something that, if they've done something that hurt me, bringing that to their attention, because maybe they're not even cognizant of something that's bothering me. But now I'm holding a grudge because when so-and-so walks through the door, this is how I'm always greeted. Like, so I can get an attitude about that. If I haven't expressed what my needs are, that falls back on me. So,
Catarina, how do you get over holding a grudge?
My initial reaction was, no, you don't need to talk to the person who offended you. That's causing the grudge. But I think depending on what your relationship is with that person, if you want to maintain a relationship with them, then yes, you do need to talk to them about it and let them know. I think really to let go of the grudges, it really is doing a lot of the personal work. And what Dr. Rhonda was saying is journaling is one way of doing it. And it's really sitting with those emotions, like really whatever that feeling is, and not to ruminate. It's not about sort of reliving and re-injuring yourself. It's a matter of really allowing yourself to feel whatever those underlying emotions are. So if you're thinking about with the two girls that wouldn't play with you in elementary school, it's really just allow yourself to feel that rejection, not for the sake of hurting yourself, but the sake of allowing your nervous system to rebalance so that you can sort of heal that wound. And what Abby was saying about it needing time is it's not a fast process. It's something that requires a lot of gentleness, a lot of self-love, and patience too. And I think journaling is definitely one way, and I would add a few other ways of whatever can help you sort of trigger those emotions at the right time, sit with them, and then find different ways to process them. And it doesn't mean analyzing, or it really is just allow those emotions to be. Eventually they do go away once you've healed.
The three of you know that I have quite a bit of trauma in my past that's much bigger than little girls not playing with me. And I am now wondering, do I have grudges that are, discovered, I guess, for lack of a better word, that maybe I should look into and see if there's some more work that I need to do on that. So thank you for bringing that to my attention in this 10-minute conversation. And I look forward to speaking to each of you again very soon.